Hi everybody, welcome along to this Left Foot Media video. For those who don't know me, my name is Brendan Malone. Today I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us Season 1. If you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything spoiled, then you're going to want to go away and come back later. If you don't care about spoilers or you've already seen the show, then watch away. Before I jump into today's conversation though, please hit that little subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber to the channel. Here's my view in a nutshell. The Last of Us Season 1 is just not that good. It is overrated television. Now, I get it, and I know I'm probably going to infuriate the die-hard fans of the game, the people who spent, about 20 hours, maybe a bit more, playing this highly immersive video game experience. And I get it, people who love this particular video game are probably going to like this show that little bit more than the rest of us because you have a bit of the old nostalgia coursing through the veins, and this is a great little nostalgia hit. If you like the game, and here you are seeing your game represented and repackaged in this new and different medium, and they are being faithful to some of the original scenes from the game, you're going to go, wow, this is great, I love it. I'm getting my nostalgia hit. I really enjoy this. But I'm not one of those guys. I have an advantage, which is also a disadvantage when it comes to the watching of this show. The disadvantage is that I am not a fan of the video game. I'd never played the video game. I was too old. I was married with kids when it came out, and so I had other things that required my time, and so I never played the video game. So I'm not a die-hard fan. I'm not even a fan of the video game. So that's a disadvantage, if you like, when it comes to this property. But it is also an advantage because what it means is I get to look at this TV series through this undisturbed, unfiltered, unbiased lens. I get to look at the TV series and say, okay, tell me a story, and I'll tell you what I think about the story that you have just told me. And I have to say that the story you've just told me, as someone who doesn't have nostalgia for the video game coursing through his veins, I don't think it's a particularly compelling one. Episode 3, I've already talked about Episode 3 in a previous episode. It was rubbish. People who were claiming that this was the greatest love story or one of the greatest love stories they'd ever seen put to the silver screen just weren't telling the truth. This was the story of a narcissistic, predatory character, and it ended with him demanding that another man help him to take his own life, and claiming that if he didn't do that, he wouldn't really love him. And then the two of them do it together. So you've got the suicide pact being outworked, and we're told, literally, that this is the most romantic thing in the world. This was garbage. It was an absolute shocker of an episode. It was, along with Episode 7, just political agitprop. Didn't really add anything meaningful at all to the story. It was there solely to promote sexual identitarian politics. That's all it was. It was propagandistic. It wasn't great storytelling. The Christian cannibal episode, of course they were Christians. I don't care whether it's in the game or not. The simple truth is there's a trend you can see in this storytelling, and the trend is propagandistic in nature. It's a storyteller who is outworking their own pathologies, their own anger and frustration and childhood wounds at the world, and what they're doing is they're outworking that through content creation. We've got the sexual identitarian politics, and then the bad guy, the psychopathic guy. What is he? He's a Bible-wielding Christian preacher who also happens to be a ruthless, brutal, barbaric, psychopathic cannibal. Of course he is. Why wouldn't it be that way? On top of all of that, there's the fact that there is very little in-depth moral examination of the landscape, the world, the scenarios that are part of this brand new apocalyptic world. And you think that that would be actually quite important. It would certainly be very interesting, and it would certainly give a lot more weight and make a lot more sense, I think, of characters and their motivations and what it is that shapes their vision of reality. Basically, we don't really delve too deeply into that. Instead, we stay at this very superficial kind of level, and I'll come to that superficiality in just a second because it drove me bonkers about this show. Here's a big question though, a really big and important question that a lot of people are actually asking. People who are willing to turn off the nostalgia tap, even if they're diehard fans of the game, and people who have never actually played the game and who can look at this a bit more objectively. We're all asking this really important question. where the heck are all the zombies in this post-apocalyptic zombie-filled world? There's just no zombies here, and that really matters for one huge reason, and I'll talk about that when I wrap up in just a second and give you my big overarching theory about why I think this has failed as a TV show. But we get this sort of burst of zombies here at the end of one episode, a big burst of them, and then we get like a zombie here and a zombie there, but there's just no credible zombie threat in this particular TV show. And so when you get characters towards the end of the show's arc or the season arc asking questions like, well, how did you survive on your own? It doesn't make any sense. That's a really dumb question to ask in this world, because this is little more than a walk in the wilderness for these characters. It would be like someone asking me, how did you survive in the Australian outback? I mean, there's snakes there, the desert's so hot, people die there all the time. How did you survive? Well, I don't know. I had a rental car and I stayed at air-conditioned motels and I ate at restaurants. What do you mean, how did I survive? How did they survive? There was no meaningful threat to them. As long as they were cautious in their approach to populated areas, or areas maybe where they couldn't see who might be there, they'd be fine. This was not a major threat, and it really needed to be a major threat. The other thing that I found just so inane and extremely frustrating about this show is the hallmark sentimentality. This was little more, as I said to someone, this was little more than Twilight for people who like zombies. That's how this show played out. Now, I know you might not like me for saying that, but too bad. Suck it up, Buttercup. It really wasn't Flash. This was just like an adolescent emotional vomit half the time. You want some sentimentality? Bleh! Here it comes. What? Did someone say sentimentality? Bleh! Here's a bit more. Oh, I know you haven't finished the last lot. Bleh! This was so frustrating. This show would just get into this schmaltzy adolescent, disconnected from reality, and as a result, it was largely meaningless. It was largely unearned. Now, I get it. If you've got nostalgia coursing through your veins and you're getting that little nostalgia dopamine hit all the time from the visuals, then you're probably not going to notice this as much. But the rest of us who are not corrupted by the nostalgia of playing the video game, this was just so blatantly obvious and very frustrating, and it's just unearned. It doesn't feel real. It's not grounded in anything, which brings me to my final point in this relatively short video explaining why I think The Last of Us just doesn't work as a TV adaptation. Now remember, I have the advantage and disadvantage, if you like, of not having been a fan of the game. And so that means I don't have the nostalgia, and that's a disadvantage. If you want to get, I guess, just a basic nostalgia-driven dopamine hit out of this series. I'm not getting those dopamine hits because I just don't have the nostalgia coursing through my veins. But the advantage here is that I have the ability to look a bit more objectively at this show. And that got me thinking, well, why didn't this show work? Like, why doesn't it work for someone like me who doesn't have the nostalgia trap waiting for them around every corner? Well, I think the reason it doesn't work is because this was a story that is actually most suited to a video game. Why and what would be the main point of difference there? Well, the huge difference is that a video game is a highly immersive experience. You spend, 20 hours minimum? Probably more for some people playing this game. That's a hugely immersive experience. And you are immersed into what? This world of dark, apocalyptic, zombie-ridden danger around every corner, and you're trying to solve puzzles, and the threat is ever present to you. You understand the darkness, the threat of this world. And so when you get a little vignette of schmaltzy sort of adolescent hallmark sentimentality, the Twilight-y type stuff, it's actually a kind of welcome reprieve, and it's balanced out pretty well by the fact of the immersive and threatening nature of the gameplay that you're spending most of your time actually immersed in. And so it's like a little welcome tea break from all of that. And it also makes a bit more sense of the sentimental stuff, and probably it gives it a little bit more weight and it makes it more earned. But in this TV show, we don't have that. We have about 7 hours worth of content here, and all of that is just compressed, schmaltzy, emotional vignettes. It's Twilight adolescent emotional vomit a lot of the time, masquerading as something great, and it just isn't. And the problem is that the one thing you needed to actually fix this problem is missing from this show, and that is the deadly, ever-present, very serious zombie threat. You put that into this TV series and you write that well, and guess what? You probably actually get away with a lot more of the schmaltzy Twilight levels of sentimentality, because it's a pretty good substitute when you do it properly for the immersive nature of the gameplay, which actually saturates you in the darkness and danger of this world. That's all missing in the show, and so it doesn't work. And so no, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and say, yo, this is like some of the greatest TV that we've ever seen, because it actually isn't some of the greatest TV we've ever seen. I am absolutely certain of the fact that in a few years' time, let's give it 5 or 10 years, when most of the hype has died away, this is not going to be considered a memorable or great piece of television from this particular era. And I would argue that even fans of the game, once the nostalgia stops coursing through the veins as strongly, are probably going to actually say, yeah, you know what, it was okay, and I love it because I'm a big fan of the game, but it's not really hugely impressive television if you consider it on its own merits without the nostalgia of the game. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the content, then please subscribe to the channel. See you next time on Left Foot Media.